I ranked every exotic weapon into a tier list for Destiny 2 PvP. Let's get started. Power weapons will be ranked, but only briefly at the end of the video. Starting off in alphabetical order, we have Ace of Spades. Although it has received a few nerfs over the years, Ace is still one of the best options out there. It has the exotic perk Memento Mori. Reloading after a kill loads the magazine with extra damage bullets. Grants radar while aiming down the sights. Memento Ace hits extremely hard, and the bonus damage is great for making it a more forgiving hand cannon and for stacking with other damage buffs. Due to the 140 archetype, really high stats, and superb perk package, Ace is an all-around amazing hand cannon that checks all of the boxes for PvP. Before we had the airborne effectiveness system, people used to say that Ace's only weakness was its airborne accuracy, but nowadays Ace can be just as good as any legendary hand cannon in the air if you build into it. Starting this list off strong, it's clear that Ace deserves a spot in the S tier. Aegir's Scepter is a very unique stasis trace rifle. The Scepter's exotic trait is called Aegir's Call, and it makes final blows with this weapon generate a slowing burst around the target. Where this weapon really starts to get interesting though is when you apply the catalyst, which allows you to drain your super in exchange for putting this weapon into overcharge. It completely annihilates anyone while doing this. You can go on some absolutely insane sprees, but it's really not worth sacrificing your super in most cases. Overall, it's a pretty average trace rifle, but it does have some flashy perks, so I'm going to be putting it in the C tier. Arbalest was the first of its kind as a special ammo linear fusion rifle in the kinetic slot. It quickly rose to the top of the meta since it received very little flinch and had generous aim assist that could lock onto opponents' heads. It has since received a ton of nerfs, making it significantly less viable. However, it still can be a decent option if you're accurate and really good with pre-charging. It doesn't really have any special perks other than using special ammo, but it is great at one-shotting supers. So since the Arbalest is still decent but no longer overpowered, I'm going to be putting it in the C tier. Bad Juju is a full auto kinetic pulse rifle that seems pretty bad at first glance, but it has a really awesome perk. Its main trait, String of Curses, refills the magazine, increasing this weapon's damage output and granting bonus super energy based on the number of kills. This is amazing for chaining kills together in 6v6, especially once you get the catalyst to extend the perk's duration, and you can get a lot of extra super energy. Its 450 RPM archetype did get buffed, making it significantly more forgiving, and it becomes even more forgiving once you get the String of Curses rolling, so I'm putting this one in the B tier. Next up is Bastion. This weapon fires in bursts and is capable of outputting a devastating amount of damage in close range. Bastion will obliterate any super in the game, but it kinda struggles in the range department. Since it has a charge time and often takes 2 or 3 bursts to kill, it's pretty hard to justify using this over something like the Chaperone, which has like almost the same effective range. So therefore, Bastion is going in the B tier. Borealis is an awesome sniper with an exotic perk called the Fundamentals. Change this weapon's damage type, cycling between Solar, Arc, and Void. The Fundamentals also gives bonus stats depending on which element you select. Most notably, in Void mode, Borealis will get plus 10 aim assist and plus 20 stability, and in Arc mode, it will get plus 25 handling and plus 5 range. This means that it can reach a ridiculous 100 handling speed while in Arc mode, which is unheard of for a high impact sniper. When you also look at its overall stat package, it's clear that Borealis is way out of band. Its stats are wildly higher than any other high impact sniper, making it feel really unique and exotic. The Borealis also has Ionic Return, a perk that grants bonus damage after breaking a Guardian's shields while matching the element type of their super. Unfortunately, this perk doesn't do much because Guardians will still survive a body shot. Overall, Borealis is an amazing sniper with insanely high stats that is now deserving of a spot in the A+ tier. Cerberus +1 is easily one of the most bizarre exotics ever made. Its exotic perk, Four-Headed Dog, reads, shoots erratic bullets from all barrels at the same time. The key word here is erratic. This weapon spread is so random that its time to kill will depend a lot on luck, and that makes it really frustrating to use. It will feel okay when you get lucky, but it's just so insanely inconsistent that most of the time it just feels bad. Like the Bastion, it does output a lot of damage if all shots land, but it's very rare for that to actually happen, so Cerberus is going down in the E tier. Cloudstrike is an electric sniper with the exotic perk Mortal Polarity. Precision final blows generate a lightning bolt at the target's location. In case that wasn't enough lightning for you, it also summons entire lightning storms if you can get rapid precision kills. This is one of the most fun to use snipers in the entire game because the lightning just allows for so many collateral kills. This is great for zapping a lot of people on an objective, or for anyone trying to get a revive in trials. Although the collaterals are extremely satisfying, Cloudstrike can be a little bit difficult to use because it has mediocre stats. With that said, its catalyst gives it 25 handling to make it really snappy, and it has crazy potential for those who use it well, so I'm putting it in the A+ tier. Coldheart was the first ever trace rifle, but nowadays it doesn't really feel too special. Its main exotic perk, called Cold Winter, makes it deal more damage the longer it remains on target, but this doesn't really do too much in PvP as the time to kill is relatively fast. Cold Heart just doesn't really compete, and it doesn't have any perks to help increase its performance, so it lands in the E tier. Collective Obligation is a Void-themed pulse rifle from the Vow of Disciple raid. It features the perk Void Leech. This weapon leeches Void debuffs when damaging targets that are suppressed, weakened, or volatile. Once charged, it can swap to an alternate fire mode and apply that debuff onto the target. Ultimately, this isn't too useful in Crucible because it's pretty difficult to actually make use of it. This weapon also has Umbral Sustenance, a perk that reloads it whenever you get a void buff like Invisibility or an Overshield. Even though its perks aren't amazing, Collective Obligation just feels like a really solid pulse rifle in its base form, so I'm putting it in the B tier. Crimson is a very strange hand cannon that kind of works like a pulse rifle, and you may hear very good or very bad things about this weapon depending on who you ask. Its exotic perk Cruel Remedy reads, kills with this weapon heal the wielder. Precision kills also refill the magazine. This is literally perfect for going on extremely long sprees. It can't get any better than infinite ammo and infinite health regeneration. However, due to the extremely slow speed that the bullets actually come out of this weapon, you almost have to play like it's an auto rifle, and you can't really peek shot like you normally would with a hand cannon. Controller players tend to love this weapon because the reticle friction helps us land all 3 shots in the burst, something that MNK players can struggle to do. As I said in the beginning, people's opinions on Crimson can be really different because it might be an S tier hand cannon for a controller player looking to go on 6v6 streaks, but it could also be like a C tier weapon for an MNK player trying to compete in trials. So all things considered, I'm going to put the Crimson in the A+ tier for controller players and the C tier for MNK players. It's also worth noting that Crimson feels more and more difficult to use as you increase your field of view because the recoil covers up the target, making it almost impossible to see anything. Cryosthesia 77K is a stasis kinetic sidearm with the exotic perk Liquid Cooling. Direct hits by a charged shot instantly freeze the target. Indirect hits freeze combatants and slow opposing guardians. This is especially powerful in situations like Rumble where you can freeze a target and then easily finish them off. With a crazy 93 aim assist, this sidearm is just pretty strong at base as well. Overall, I'm going to put this one in the B tier. Deadman's Tale is a unique lever-action scout rifle, and it's one of the only exotics in the game that can roll with random perks. You can use Vorpal Weapon to melt opposing supers, Killing Wind for bonus stats, or even Moving Target for bonus aim assist and strafe speed. There are several great options. On top of that, its exotic perk Cranial Spike makes chaining precision hits grant bonus target acquisition and range. Especially once you have the catalyst, Deadman's Tale is a hipfire monster, allowing you to strafe and fire really fast and have perfect accuracy without even aiming. It used to be that Deadman's Tale was only powerful for mouse and keyboard, but it has undergone several changes over the last couple years, and now it's really viable on any input device. It remains one of the best weapons in the game, and it comfortably sits up in the S tier. Dead Messenger is a wave grenade launcher that unleashes 3 waves upon impact with the ground. Since the angle of these 3 waves is so large, it's kind of hard to miss with this weapon, and it deals considerable damage. If you proceed to clean up the damaged target with a melee or another weapon, you'll find that it's pretty difficult for anything to counter you in close to medium range. Overall, I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Delicate Tomb is a rather odd-looking fusion that fires horizontal spread from the hip and a vertical spread while aiming down sights. Its main perk, called Trader's Vessel, also causes it to generate ionic traces on final blows. Then, its second perk, called Tempest Cascade, makes that ionic trace overload the weapon and jolt the next target. Unfortunately, these exotic perks are relatively useless, and the fusion itself feels wildly inconsistent and rarely capable of one-shotting anything outside of the shotgun range. I'm putting this one in the F tier. If you took 1000 voices and then compressed it into a tiny little sidearm, you'd get the Devil's Ruin. This fiery exotic's main perk is Close the Gap. Press and release to fire individual shots. Hold to charge up a high-powered, stunning laser. The base form of this sidearm is fairly decent and ordinary, but the laser is very deadly, and if you time it just right, you can annihilate supers with it. I think the laser is actually really powerful and has surprisingly long range, but it kind of requires some planning like a fusion rifle. This is a super fun exotic to use, especially for 6v6, and it has become even more powerful over the years with nerfs to special weapons like fusions and shotguns. I'm putting this one in the A- tier. Divinity is an arc trace rifle with the exotic perk Judgment. Sustained damage with this weapon envelops the target in a field that weakens and stuns them. In PvP terms, this basically just means it turns the guardians into a big headshot box. This can be nice for hitting people slightly around the corner as they try to escape, but overall it doesn't really matter. This exotic has a really slow time to kill of 1.13 seconds, which is way worse than any other trace rifle, so I'm gonna put it way down in the F tier. Duality is a slug and pellet shotgun hybrid. Its compression chamber exotic perk makes it fire a spread in hipfire mode, but a single pellet while aiming. Duality is amazing because it allows you to react really fast and hip fire nearby opponents, or aim down sights and slug shotgun more distant opponents. This makes it perhaps the most versatile shotgun in the game, and it compares nicely with a wide variety of primary weapons. Now that shotguns have fixed pellet spreads, Duality is actually one of the farthest reaching and most consistent spreads in the entire game. Its other perk, On Black Wings, grants extra precision damage and a massive reload buff, so it will reload really fast. Overall, Duality is an amazing shotgun worthy of a spot in the A+ tier. Edge of Intent, Edge of Concurrence, and Edge of Action are all class-specific exotic glaives that I'm going to review all at once. They each have a specific ability that can be activated after landing 4 ranged attacks, which, by the way, is exceedingly difficult to do. The Titan one can make a bubble, which is actually really powerful for objectives, but don't mistake this for a normal Titan bubble. This one is far less powerful. The exotic glaive produces a healing turret that will heal almost your entire health bar every few seconds. Lastly, the Hunter Glaive unleashes a crazy lightning explosion that will one-shot everyone nearby and track targets. These all look insanely cool, but at the end of the day, they're all just glaives with the potential to very, very rarely activate a cool ability. They each have their strengths and weaknesses in their stats and abilities, but overall, I'd rank them at about the same place in the E tier. Ariana's Vow comes with the exotic perk Looks Can Kill. This weapon fires special shield-piercing ammunition, and it comes with a scope. It also has Death at First Glance, giving it bonus damage on opening shots while aiming. With 24 zoom and its use of special ammo, this thing feels more like a sniper rifle than a hand cannon, and its recoil is wildly strong, so it's often best to use Ariana's together with another weapon like a hand cannon, bow, or SMG. A significant damage buff with this weapon can let you one-shot with it, but overall that's fairly rare and you'd probably be better off just using a sniper, so I'm going to put Ariana's in the C tier. Fighting Lion is a primary ammo grenade launcher, the only one in the game. Its perk, Thin the Herd, increases reload speed after damaging multiple opponents, and defeating grenade-damaged opponents refills the magazine. This weapon is best when you deal a bit of damage and then switch to your other weapon to clean up, and the Catalyst will help with this, granting bonus accuracy and handling to that weapon. It can also be used around the corner to damage or even eliminate people who are in cover. In the hands of a good player, this weapon is insanely annoying to play against, and it has almost no counter. It can just spit out an endless stream of grenades that deal pretty significant amount of damage while bouncing all over the place. I'm gonna put this one in the B tier. Forerunner is a super unique special ammo sidearm that's meant for very long ranges. Its exotic perk is called Full Stop, oversized sidearm with extended range and heavy caliber rounds. Fires full auto with increased rate of fire. It also has Pace Yourself, a perk that rewards you with more accuracy and less recoil if you tap the trigger. Although this weapon is limited by the fact that it can easily run out of ammo, it feels quite powerful being able to 3-tap at sniper range while using a sidearm. I'm gonna rank this one in the A- tier. Graviton Lance is one of the only 2-burst pulse rifles in the game, making it feel fairly unique. Its main exotic perk, Cosmology, causes enemy targets to detonate and spawn void projectiles that track targets. This is great for getting collateral kills, or at the very least, damaging a second target to make them easier to clean up. Graviton also has Black Hole. The second shot of the burst rips a hole through space-time, dealing high damage and recoil with no falloff. This makes the second shot extremely important and sometimes difficult to hit, and it also has a slow time to kill of 1 second, so I'm gonna put it in the D tier. Hardlight has the perk The Fundamentals. Change this weapon's damage type, cycling between Solar, Arc, and Void. The buff to Fundamentals actually makes Hardlight feel notably better. In Arc mode, it has a wild 100 handling, 100 stability, and 100 aim assist, which feels pretty insane for an auto rifle. Even at 100 stability though, it still bounces quite a bit for controller players. It also has the Volatile Light perk. Rounds fired from this weapon have reduced damage falloff, over-penetrate targets, and ricochet off of hard surfaces. Projectile damage increases after bounce. This is super fun for priming targets around corners and also extremely useful for preventing health regeneration. Hardlight is an alright option with a pretty cool aesthetic, and it's gonna land in the B tier. Hawkmoon was the first exotic to roll with random perks, which makes it quite powerful to begin with, and it also has Paracausal Shot. Final blows and precision hits with Hawkmoon grant stacks of Paracausal Charge. The final round of the magazine deals bonus damage based on the number of stacks. With the Catalyst increasing the mag size by 1, it's incredibly fun to run around in PvP acquiring Paracausal Charge stacks and then one-shot caw-cawing people to their graves with the final bullet in the mag. With this super high 93 aim assist and the potential to roll with extremely good perks like Eye of the Storm, Rangefinder, and Opening Shot, Hawkmoon has earned a spot in the S tier. Hierarchy of Needs. Where do I even begin with this thing? It's a solar bow that has the perk Guidance Ring. Precision hits build up energy, and then you can hip fire to create this ring. When you fire arrows through this ring, it will summon tracking projectiles in addition to the regular arrow. Very, very cool concept, but unfortunately, the #1 use of this ring is to put it out and then hope that it confuses your opponents because it looks kinda funny. The ring is extremely bad for a few reasons. Number 1, it's small and restricts your movement. Number 2, the tracking projectiles barely deal any damage. And number 3, the tracking is so bad on the tracking projectiles that they almost always miss a moving target. Overall, this bow is a mess. The game thinks it's an SMG and displays an SMG icon in the feed. The exotic perk sucks, and despite having good stats, this bow feels extremely clunky, inaccurate, and downright painful to use. I think this is one of the coolest and most unique exotics in the game, so it's difficult for me to say this, but I'm gonna have to put this one in the F tier. Izanagi's Burden has the perk Honed Edge. Consume the magazine and load around with additional range and damage. This can be useful for consuming a large amount of bullets and one-shotting people to the body, but ultimately this isn't very useful, especially now that special ammo is more rare. The low stats and awkward reticle make it difficult to use, and it doesn't have any extraordinary perks to make it stand out. I think this sniper belongs in the D tier, with the note that Honed Edge can be potentially useful for securing easy body shots. Jotun is a very interesting fusion rifle with the perk Charged Shot. Hold down the trigger to charge up tracking shot that explodes and burns on impact. This weapon is extremely easy to use at low levels of play as it has generous tracking, but due to the travel time and the long charge time, it isn't super competitive at high level PvP. With that said, it's rather annoying to play against, and it can sometimes even track players around the corner as they run away in terror. I'm gonna put this one in the B tier. Lemonarch is a bow with the perk Poison Arrows. Arrows fired quickly after a draw become poison arrows. Precision hits with poison arrows spread poison to nearby enemies. And wow, the poison can really spread fast to a lot of enemies. It also has Snapshot to help fire those arrows super fast. It seems that a lot of people don't know this since it's not actually listed anywhere on the weapon, but as a lightweight bow, Monarch makes you move faster. This bow is quite strong in PvP since the burn damage prevents health regeneration for some time, and it also just outputs a lot of damage overall. I think it's easily the best bow on this tier list and has earned a place up in the A- tier. Lord of Wolves is a shotgun with the exotic perk Shrapnel Launcher. Fires a powerful short-range burst of solar damage. The shotgun can hit some moderately long ranges if you're accurate and remain on target during the entire burst. This weapon has been ridiculously overpowered on many different occasions, but nowadays it has been brought down to a more reasonable level of power. I'm gonna put the Lord of Wolves in the C tier because it can kill at moderate distance and it's pretty fun to use, but it's not really the most potent special weapon option at the moment. Lorentz Driver is basically just Arbalist, except with tons of flashy perks added on top. The driver's main exotic perk is Lagrangian Sights. Final blows on marked targets generate a telemetry pattern. Picking up telemetry patterns grants bonus ability energy, and collecting 3 telemetry patterns without dying grants this weapon bonus damage. In addition, EM Anomaly will cause targets to implode, sucking in all nearby enemies and detonating a Void Blast. The Lorentz has perhaps the coolest sound design of any weapon in the entire game, and it's seriously a ton of fun to use in all Crucible modes. The Void detonations are flashy and exciting, the aim assist is still fairly sticky, and the telemetry patterns give a huge 50% bonus damage for 30 seconds, allowing for some really cheesy body shot sprees. After all the nerfs it has gotten, it now receives an absurd amount of flinch for incoming fire and isn't particularly easy to use anymore, so I'm going to be putting it in the A- tier. Lumina has the exotic perk Noble Rounds. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants. Absorbing a remnant converts your next hip-fired shot into an ally-seeking Noble Round and partially refills the magazine. Working in conjunction, its other perk, Blessing of the Sky, makes Noble Rounds heal allies and grant you and them bonus weapon damage. Lumina's ability to provide bonus damage can set up some pretty cool combos, but it can be kind of awkward and time-consuming to use the Noble Rounds on your teammates. Overall, the hand cannon itself is pretty average, so I'm going to be putting it in the B tier. Malfeasance has the exotic perk Explosive Shadow. The perk causes enemies to explode after 5 shots, and notably, these shots can be at any range. These explosions are pretty powerful and do a great job of taking down anyone who has a super or a damage resist. Explosions aside though, Malfeasance simply isn't a very good hand cannon, and its 180 RPM archetype isn't doing it any favors, so I'm putting it down in the D tier. Merciless has the exotic perk Conserve Momentum that makes it charge faster after non-lethal hits, but honestly this perk is mostly meant for PvE. It does have another perk called Impetus though, and it's basically like Kill Clip except super strong. It makes it do up to 96 damage per bolt, and yeah, that is just insane. It also has a hidden Feeding Frenzy perk that is super nice to get a faster reload to activate the Kill Clip perk. The Catalyst does give Merciless tons of range and stability, and it used to be one of the best fusions in the game, but nowadays it struggles to compete and can't even reliably kill supers. It's going to land in the D tier. Mida Multi-Tool provides faster movement speed, and its perk Mida Radar grants radar while aiming. It also has no distractions via its catalyst, and that actually works super well with Mida Radar. I found myself noticing the flinch reduction quite a lot, and that can really make the difference in many primary duels. Mida is overall fairly effective in this meta, but it's still a scout rifle and doesn't hold a candle to Dead Man's Tale at the moment, so I'm gonna put it in the C tier. Monte Carlo's perk is the Monte Carlo method. Dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully recharge your melee ability with each kill. In addition, its Markov chain perk is basically just Swashbuckler with a new name. This is a perfect pairing for many melee-focused builds like throwing knives, and it can really melt people with Markov chain. Overall, Monte is a pretty solid auto rifle, but auto rifles in general aren't in a super great spot at the moment, so it's going to go in the C tier. No Time to Explain has an extremely cool set of exotic perks that work in tandem. First, landing precision hits will generate stacks of Rewind Again. Second, after 10 stacks of Rewind Again, Time Slip will literally open a portal to an alternate timeline where another version of this weapon will help you shoot your opponents, kind of like an arc buddy. This is amazing because the Time Slip will fire instantly, meaning that you can almost always get the first shot in the engagement, especially if you peek with cover to your right. No Time did get a nerf, and it's now a bit harder to use, but overall it's still an outstanding weapon deserving of a spot in the S tier. Osteostriga is a craftable SMG that feels completely different from everything else on this list. It has the perk Screaming Swarm, fires a stream of sentient toxic projectiles that track the targeted enemy. It also has Toxic Overload, a perk that makes poisonous bursts that spread to nearby targets. This looks and feels extremely cool, but unfortunately, these projectiles travel so slowly that it often leads to some awkward situations. You'll find yourself sitting there waiting for the projectiles to reach the enemy while they're just absolutely destroying you. With the travel time being so long, you'll almost never get the first shot in any engagement, and this matters quite a bit considering how strong the flinch is in this game. For this reason, I'm going to put it in the D tier. Outbreak Perfected's main perk is the Corruption Spreads. This weapon creates Siva nanite swarms on rapid hits and precision kills. Outbreak is unique because it's the only pulse rifle in the game that actually recoils like an auto rifle. This makes it feel ridiculously stable and very different from the other pulses. Although it might not be as insane as No Time to Explain, this is a really solid exotic pulse that has earned a spot in the A- tier. Polaris Lance has the exotic perk The Perfect Fifth. Precision hits return ammo to the mag. Landing 4 precision hits loads a delayed solar explosive round for your next shot. This is a really cool scout overall, and the explosive solar round can help you get some easy killing sprees. With that said, it's a 150 RPM scout, and those require you to land all 3 headshots, and they aren't really top contenders at the moment, so it's going to land down in the E tier. Quicksilver Storm is a 720 RPM kinetic auto rifle and grenade launcher hybrid. When firing in auto rifle form, it will periodically release rocket tracers that home in on the target, but they can sometimes feel a little unreliable and they do take some time to travel to the target. After landing multiple rockets though, it can convert into a grenade launcher that does about 120 damage per hit. Ultimately, the Quicksilver doesn't really compete with most of the other autos on this list, so I'm going to put it in the D tier with the note that it could rank higher once we gain access to its catalyst. Prometheus Lens is a trace rifle with the perk Prismatic Inferno. Fires a solar trace beam and generates a damaging heat field that grows while the weapon continues to fire. It also has Frame Refraction to refill the magazine after a kill, which is pretty useful, especially in 6v6. Prometheus is pretty fun to use, but overall it's not very impressive, especially now that we have legendary trace rifles, so it's going down in the D tier. Rat King's exotic perk Rat Pack allows this weapon to be more powerful when nearby allies are also using Rat King. A full fire team of Rat Kings is actually insane. Speaking of fire teams, if you're looking to group up with some like-minded guardians, or if you just want to hang out with an awesome community, you should join my Discord server at discord.gg/shadowdestiny. If you're not in a fire team, the chance of finding another Rat King user is basically 0, so the perk is not that useful without some coordination. It also has the perk called Vermin. Reloading immediately after a kill grants invisibility, and if you have the catalyst, it begins health regeneration. It also has a pretty high 80 aim assist and 100 recoil direction with the catalyst. Overall, I'm putting Rat King in the C tier. Revision Zero is an awesome pulse rifle and sniper rifle hybrid. You build up energy by landing precision hits with the pulse rifle, and then you can swap over to it being a sniper. The sniper barely takes any flinch and it feels incredibly nice to use, but it does take quite a few pulse rifle bursts to charge it up. Revision Zero also has the option to switch between 4 burst and 2 burst modes, and both of these are fairly viable depending on your preferences. At the time of recording, it's the only exotic that has 4 catalysts, and in addition to crafting, this lets us really customize the weapon exactly how we want it. Overall, Revision Zero is a great pulse that truly feels exotic, and it's going to land in the A- tier with the potential to rank even higher in the future. Risk Runner has the perk Arc Conductor. When taking arc damage, this weapon becomes more powerful and resists incoming arc damage. kills extend the time in this overcharged state. Its other perk, Superconductor, returns ammo to the magazine and chains arc energy between opponents when Superconductor is active. Risk Runner is really powerful against anyone using an arc primary weapon. It feels great when Superconductor is active, but it really struggles in the range department. Featuring a very low zoom value of just 13, Risk Runner really can't compete with legendary SMGs. Risk Runner is pretty good, but especially after its nerf, it really isn't a top contender. For now, I'm going to put the Risk Runner in the B tier. Ruinous Effigy is a trace rifle that lets you literally dunk on your opponents. Its exotic perk called Transmutation transforms defeated guardians into void balls that you can then pick up and dunk on people. You can also use it to reduce incoming damage, but I think you'd be better off just shooting your weapon. Unfortunately, due to the range of the dunk being extremely short, it's not really all that effective. Ruinous is a super fun weapon to use and mess around with, but since it is yet another trace rifle with really useless perks, it's landing down in the E tier. Skyburner's Oath. Funny story, I actually forgot this weapon existed, and it wasn't in the first draft of this video. That should tell you about all you need to know about this weapon. It is simply forgettable. It sucks when using it as a scout rifle, and it's even worse when hip firing. I'm putting it in the E tier. Sturm is a 120 hand cannon with all-around fantastic stats, making it a decent option even when 120 hand cannons aren't the meta. In addition, it has a unique interaction with a sidearm called Drang. Final blows with Drang load overcharged bullets into Sturm, and these weapons also reload each other. If you stack another damage boost on top of overcharge, Sturm can actually one-shot opponents, which is extremely powerful and satisfying. Overall, this is a solid hand cannon, and you can make some interesting plays with Drang, so I'm going to put it in the A- tier. Sunshot's exotic perk is Sunburn. This weapon fires explosive rounds and highlights targets that take damage from Sunshot. This helps to increase the effective range of the weapon because the explosions don't suffer damage falloff. Sunshot also has Sun Blast, which makes targets explode, and this can occasionally lead to some really awesome looking collateral kills. Sunshot is a 150 RPM hand cannon, which makes it have super high potential for those who can 3-tap, but it has two big weaknesses that prevent it from being top tier: aim assist and target visibility. With an aim assist stat of only 60, the Sunshot really is not as forgiving as other hand cannons, and the recoil animation plus all of the solar effects make it really hard to see your target. However, the potential is definitely there, and this is an S tier hand cannon for anyone who can reliably 3-tap with it, but since almost nobody can do this, it's going in the B tier. Suros Regime's exotic perk is Suros Legacy. The bottom half of the magazine deals bonus damage and has a chance to return health on final blows. Additionally, it has two modes: spinning up, which increases the rate of fire while holding the trigger, and dual speed receiver, which grants more damage at the cost of a slower fire rate. At the moment, spinning up seems to be optimal for PvP, and it can really melt people if you get the timing down and engage when it's at its maximum speed. However, like the Hardlight, Suros isn't exactly in the best place right now due to auto rifles being off meta, so Suros is going to land in the C tier. Sweet Business has the exotic perk Payday, larger magazine, increased accuracy when firing from the hip. Its business time perk also increases its range and rate of fire during sustained fire. Sweet Business is a fun exotic to use, but it really struggles during the time when it's ramping up to its max rate of fire, featuring a really bad time to kill of approximately 1.2 seconds. However, once it has reached maximum rate of fire, the Sweet Business destroys guardians in a blazing 0.6 seconds. The main issue with this exotic is it's really easy to outplay it before it reaches its max RPM, and it's also so loud that you can hear it from like across the entire map. It's pretty easy for opponents to just listen to you fire and then peek you after you run out of ammo. So because this weapon is so easy to counter in higher levels of play, I'm going to put the Sweet Business in the D tier. Symmetry is a scout rifle with the exotic perk Revolution. This weapon fires full auto and can swap to Arc Seeker mode. Arc Seekers track towards combatants you target. It also has a perk called Dynamic Charge. Precision hits build up dynamic charge. Swapping to Arc Seeker mode increases the damage and partially reloads the mag based on the number of charges. Basically, if you get some stacks of dynamic charge by using the weapon normally and then swap to Arc Seeker mode, you can 2-tap people without even aiming. Although this is really powerful, the normal firing mode of this weapon really sucks and has a subpar range stat of only 37, so this one is going in the E tier. Teraba is one of the coolest SMGs in the entire game, and it's currently my personal favorite. Its main exotic perk, Ravenous Beast, makes it store power when dealing or receiving damage, and then once its power is full, you hold the reload button to unleash the beast. This just shreds through anything in the game with a ridiculous time to kill of 0.33 seconds. The notable thing about this weapon is that it's all about the damage you deal and receive, not about final blows. So you could just go deal a bunch of damage and not get any final blows, and then unleash the beast and melt anyone in 1/3 of a second. Teraba definitely isn't overpowered, but it's an incredibly strong option and it's super fun for anyone who likes to go on sprees. If you don't have this weapon, it's worth saving up the spoils to get it. You will not be disappointed. Teraba definitely deserves a place in the S tier. Telesto's main exotic perk is Unplanned Reprieve. Fusion projectiles attach and detonate with a delayed Void Blast. Through all the memes about Telesto breaking the game, this weapon has ended up in a pretty decent spot. It can reach some really long distances if you're able to control the recoil and place the bolts tightly together, but the delay before detonation really sucks and leads to a ton of trades. Overall, this weapon is a pretty powerful exotic with some serious playmaking potential, so it has earned a spot in the A- tier. The Chaperone is an exotic sniper rifle. It might say shotgun on its description, but I will always refer to it as a sniper. It has a perk called Roadborne. Precision kills briefly grant bonus handling, range, and precision damage with this weapon. Even after the nerf to this perk, Chaperone still absolutely maps people. With a maxed out range bar, absurdly generous aim assist, and very fast handling, it's easily one of the best weapons in the game. It has fallen significantly in popularity since its nerf, but Chaperone is still an all-around fantastic weapon that is definitely deserving of a spot in the S tier. The Fourth Horseman has two main exotic perks. Broadside increases the damage and spread with each successive shot, and Thunderer drastically increases the rate of fire and makes this weapon full auto. This weapon has a really poor range stat and only one-shot kills at extremely close range, so it almost always takes 2 or more shots to eliminate an opponent. The whole idea is that it fires so fast that you can clean people up in 2 or 3 shots. This weapon used to be kind of okay, but now that special ammo is so rare, its inefficient use of ammo really hurts. I'm gonna rank this one in the F tier. Huckleberry's exotic perk is Ride the Bull. Increased rate of fire and recoil while you're holding down the trigger. Final blows reload a portion of the magazine. If you get the catalyst, kills will entirely refill the magazine, so it just gets even better. It also has Rampage, which provides extra damage and pairs beautifully with the Ride the Bull perk for extra long kill sprees with unlimited ammo. Huckleberry has a very competitive time to kill of 0.67 seconds that competes with the best weapons out there, but unfortunately you have to hit all headshots to achieve that speed. Now featuring a zoom stat of 15, the Huckleberry can reach around 20 meters of range, but it isn't effective much beyond that due to its low range stat of only 53. With that said, the slaying potential is really good, especially for 6v6, so Huckleberry is going in the A- tier. The Jade Rabbit's exotic perk is the Fate of All Fools. Chain precision shots to gain bonus damage on your next body shot and return ammo to the mag. With a perfect recoil direction of 100 and the exotic catalyst bringing the stability up to 80, the Jade Rabbit is very controllable and it's very consistent when it comes to 3-tabbing guardians at long range. If you start missing your headshots though, this weapon becomes extremely bad due to its lengthy body shot time to kill of 2 seconds. Overall, it's a very consistent and straightforward weapon to use, but I don't really think it's a top contender in the sandbox, so I'm gonna rank it in the B tier. The Last Word is another one of those weapons that can perform really differently depending on what input device you use. When it first came out, this weapon had almost no recoil on mouse and keyboard and felt extremely dominant, but nowadays it's much more popular among controller players and it's difficult to use on mouse and keyboard. Its exotic perk Fanfire makes it fire in full auto, and hipfire shots deal bonus precision damage while increasing reload and accuracy. Although it is full auto, I still recommend that most players pace their shots to go for maximum accuracy, because securing all headshots with the Last Word can result in a time to kill as fast as 0.53 seconds, making it one of the fastest killing weapons in the entire game. Overall, I'm gonna rank the Last Word in the S tier for controller players and the B tier for mouse and keyboard. The Manticore is an SMG with some airborne focus perks that make its gameplay extremely unique. It has Soaring Fang. Dealing damage while grounded charges it up, and then dealing damage while in the air extends these anti-grav repulsors that basically make you float in the air. Additionally, it has Swooping Talons to increase its airborne damage output. Unfortunately, this weapon makes you feel very overextended while floating and making use of the exotic perk, and it requires a very careful playstyle in order to use it successfully. On the ground though, it's a very solid weapon with some pretty high stats for a 900 RPM SMG. Overall, I'm gonna put this one in the C tier. Thorn is a classic hand cannon that deals damage over time with a burn, and this can be quite useful because it forces opponents to wait longer to regenerate their shields, and the ticking numbers allow you to see what they're doing through the walls. Thorn has 2 exotic perks that complement one another. Mark of the Devourer makes rounds pierce targets and deal damage over time. Kills with this weapon leave behind remnants. Next, Soul Devourer grants bonus damage and burn if you pick up one of the glowy green remnants. Once you've picked up one of the remnants, you'll gain the ability to 2-tap, which is extremely powerful. Overall, Thorn can be a really powerful option for PvP, but it doesn't have the longest range, so I'm gonna put it in the A+ tier. Tiku's Divination is actually surprisingly good if you play to its strengths. It has the exotic perk Sacred Flame. Hip-firing this weapon fires multiple tracking projectiles. Targets marked by these projectiles explode upon death, or when struck by another Sacred Flame's explosion. The hip-fire mode of this weapon has absurdly strong tracking, and you can literally just spam fire it and tag the entire team. Tiku's Divination also has Causality Arrows, a perk that makes Sacred Flames detonate instantly when aiming, and perfectly drawn headshots increase the size of the explosion. Although I think it's a very unique exotic and a fun weapon to use, it definitely isn't on the level of Monarch, so I'm gonna put this one in the C tier. Tommy's matchbook is actually pretty slept on. Tommy's has nearly perfect hipfire accuracy and a huge magazine. With many other weapons, the aim assist cone gets a penalty right after you stop sprinting, but this isn't the case with Tommy's, so it really caters to a run and gun type of playstyle. It has the exotic perk Ignition Trigger. Sustained fire with this weapon overheats it, increasing damage but burning the user. It kills pretty fast in its base form at 0.77 seconds, but it becomes extremely deadly and kills even faster when overheated. This is great for melting roaming supers. Since they one-shot anyway, it doesn't really matter if you're low on health. Overall, this is a really fun weapon to use, and it has a lot of potential if you can hit fire it accurately, but the burning effect can make you pretty easy to counter, so I'm gonna put the Tommy's in the A- tier. Touch of Malice is the classic King's Fall scout rifle. The final round in its magazine deals bonus damage, but also deals self-damage and then regenerates the bullet. So it effectively has infinite ammo until you run out of health and die. The final round state does deal massive damage and makes this one of the most lethal weapons in the game, but since it also hurts you, it makes you a very easy target for your opponents. This weapon makes engagements end a lot faster, one way or the other. As a rapid-fire scout, it's not really in a super viable PvP archetype, so I'm gonna put this one in the D tier. Traveler's Chosen has the perk Gathering Light. Final blows with this weapon grant stacks of Gathering Light. You can then consume the stacks, granting melee, grenade, and class ability energy based on the number of stacks. This makes Traveler's Chosen an ideal pairing for ability-based builds where you can just farm the energy through the sidearm final blows. The Traveler's Chosen also has Gift of the Traveler. Each stack of Gathering Light improves this weapon's reload, handling, and target acquisition. This will basically just buff the weapon and make it feel extremely snappy until you decide to consume the stacks. It has a nice stat package overall and feels pretty good to use, so I think it has earned a place in the A- tier. Trinity Ghoul fires an arrow that splits when released, but aiming down sights and fully drawing the bow both decrease the spread. With the catalyst, all kills cause it to become electrified, making the next arrow create chain lightning. Especially if you stack a damage bonus on top of this, Trinity Ghoul can be a decent option for zapping people who stand too close together in 6v6. However, this bow is extremely bad for 3v3 modes, and since these rankings are based on the overall Crucible, I don't think I can rank this one higher than the E tier. Trespasser is an arc 3-burst sidearm with some very high potential perks. Unrepentant makes it so that reloading after a kill gives you a powerful super burst, and then Be the Danger makes it so that the super burst kills reload more super bursts. This is incredibly powerful because these super bursts can one-shot, but you do have to be pretty accurate in order to do this. Overall, this is a very fun weapon to use, and it can be very strong if you're good with it, but it isn't that easy to use and it frequently gets overshadowed by SMGs. I'm putting this one in the A- tier. Vex Mythoclast is a fusion that fires like an auto rifle, and after getting a couple kills, it can transform into a linear fusion rifle. The auto rifle form really melts and has a pretty generous range, and the linear fusion rifle mode is wild considering that you don't even need special ammo. It's not particularly viable for something like Trials because you almost never get to activate the linear fusion mode, but it's a ton of fun for 6v6. I'm gonna rank this one in the A+ tier. Vigilance Wing has the exotic perk Harsh Truths. This weapon fires a 5-round burst. When a nearby ally is killed, you gain health regeneration and increased movement speed. I found that this perk actually activates really frequently, especially in 6v6, and the health regen and movement speed can really come in clutch to save your life sometimes. With an optimal time to kill of 0.7 seconds, this weapon can really dominate if you can track your target for the entire 5-round burst. One of the main downsides to this pulse is that since it fires 5 bullets and they come out quite slowly, your tracking aim has got to be on point and you really can't peek shot like you can with other pulses. Finally, this weapon also has the perk Last Stand, which increases your weapon performance and health regeneration when you're the last guardian standing. Overall, I think Vigilance is somewhat slept on, and it's an amazing exotic, especially when you use the Vigil of Saint 14 ornament to get a super clean view of the target. I'm putting this one in the A+ tier. Wave Splitter is a trace rifle with 3 levels of power that oscillate while the trigger is held. It has a perk called Supercharged Battery that provides a brief moment of maximum power after picking up an orb of power. Overall, I think the oscillating power modes are really cool, but they don't really have that much of an impact on the weapon's performance. It does have decent stats, but overall, Wave Splitter doesn't feel too powerful, and it's going in the D tier. Wishender's exotic perk, Queen's Wrath, provides the ability to see through walls while drawing the bow and aiming down the sights. Infinite wall hacks lets you pre-fire your opponents and shoot the instant they leave cover, so it will appear that you have insanely fast reaction speed. Even if you don't actually use the bow itself, the sheer amount of information provided by the wall hacks will give you a competitive edge in something like Trials of Osiris. Aside from True Sight though, Wishender is not a great bow, and it's hard to justify using up the exotic slot just to gather information, so I'm gonna rank it in the E tier. Witherhoard has the exotic perk Primeval's Torment. Projectiles fired from this weapon blight the target or nearby area on impact. This exotic is excellent for zoning off areas of the map, forcing people out of cover, and also off of zones. If you place it on a zone, it will force the opponent to retreat, and then you can easily clean them up with another weapon. It's easily one of the best weapons in the game for any mode that has an objective, whether that's Iron Banner or a zone in Trials of Osiris. Witherhoard can also stick directly onto opponents and one-shot any super in the game, but due to the amount of time it takes to kill them, this often also results in your death. Even so, a good Witherhoard user can be extremely devastating and give the opposing team a really hard time, so I'm gonna put it in the B tier. As promised, here are my power weapon rankings. Since you can only use power ammo for a very limited time in PvP, I decided not to spend an extra 30 minutes talking about each of these individually. I'm not sure if you noticed, but this is actually my super hidden second channel. At the time of recording, I have exactly 0 subscribers, so you should subscribe. You might also want to check out the other videos that I have on this secret channel, like this one, for example. Thank you and goodbye.